please welcome for this particular session, we've got Keith Bedford and Natalie Lethbridge. Please give them a warm welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Lethbridge from Atomic Digital, and I'm delighted to be speaking to Keith Bedford, who is General Manager of Wurl. Wurl is, for those of you who are not familiar with it, the largest provider of fast channels in the US and very present also in Europe. How many channels do you provide in the US? I'll leave that there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so we provide 2,000 channels in the US, well over that, but 6,000 streams in total to all the major streaming platforms in the US. So from Plex to Roku, Samsung, LG. So we cover the whole of the market in the US. We also cover, obviously, Europe and the rest of the area as well.
So, I mean, let's talk first about the European market, because I think what's so interesting in all the stats that we're seeing is obviously the US market is really forging ahead, and the European market is some way behind. So just to give a sense of that, 50% of ad spend is supposed to be going towards CTV. That's a 12 billion forecast from Omdia just recently by 2028, of which 1.2 billion will be in Europe. So that shows you a little bit of how much catching up there is to do. Comparing the evolution of the fast market in the US to here, do you have a sense of some of the challenges and opportunity that you've been able to see coming over from the US to here?
Yeah, certainly. So we are seeing that growth in the US. Obviously, you know, they're way ahead of Europe as far as advertising spend, channels and content. So just to break that down a bit, the ad spend in 2022 in the US went from 3 billion to 11 billion on CTV alone. Yeah. So there's definitely some shift from the major agencies on where they're going to spend their money, and that's going into CTV. Yeah. You know, that is slower in Europe. You know, it's all about distribution and growing that network here. And some of the challenges are completely different in Europe. So in the US, there's a lot of channels are all integrated into a singular EPG, so obviously that's an advantage. From a consumer point of view, they don't really know if those channels are CTV or over-the-air or satellite. So they're sitting within a singular EPG, and that's not really how that's working in Europe currently.
This is a fundamental issue, actually, isn't it? So there is, what you're saying there is a fundamentally different approach to actually being able to source and find a channel. So in that context, you know, there's technology innovation. We've just heard about some things being done to really look at the discovery of services. But you guys were acquired not fairly recently by AppLovin, who are the experts in being able to get people inside and outside of apps. So it would be interesting to see what that has provided in terms of your experience and your intentions and what you see as critical. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of performance marketing, which typically has been undervalued by channel providers. You know, as I've seen services launch, they go, they launch, and they kind of do a little bit with the platform, and they look at where their placements are, but they haven't really thought about performance marketing in depth.
Yeah. So I'm going to roll back a little bit there. So just another difference between US and Europe is there's a really strong PSB offering in Europe.
Yeah,
so, you know,
free TV's available.
Free TV's available. You know, it's good content. If we take the UK as an example, a lot of the good content comes from the major PSBs, so that's obviously driven the market. Getting back to where this EPG is going, there are, you know, Freely is launching next year on Hisense, so they're the first company to sign up with that. So, you know, what that's going to do is open up the opportunity to integrate lots of channels into a singular app or EPG, so that's obviously looking at changing the market. And then just rolling back to, you know, AppLovin, we were purchased 2 years ago by AppLovin. They're a performance marketing business in the app world. You know, they're driving consumers to apps that they've got by targeting them for ads. And one of the goals for AppLovin is to open this up into the CTV space. So that's what our focus is. So, but until we can't do that unless we've got more distribution and more channels in Europe. So obviously in the US, this is working. We've launched products there called Content Discovery, which is performance marketing based product where we are targeting viewers. So we understand, so let's just take an example like Tastemade.
Yeah, I was interested in a specific example about what value that delivers.
Yeah, so
to your customers.
Tastemade are using our service for content discovery, and they're a cooking channel. We understand, we take their metadata and we understand what they're showing, when that's coming up, and then we get creative made by a company that we own called Spark Labs, and then we target viewers that like similar content. So it's a slightly different approach to the UX, but the concept is there. You know, ultimately we want to match viewers with the channels to drive revenue for that channel. So in the case of Tastemade, we targeted some potential audiences for them. We tracked the audience creatives through the ads back to the channel, and obviously what we want to see is an uplift in that channel audience, hence then an uplift in the ad revenue, and that's what we've proven with them. So there was about 150% return on their investment, and this is the major thing about CTV, is tracking audiences and attribution to drive revenue for channels.
Which I think is one of the challenges that's been discussed at length today. There's also the challenge of intelligent ad inventory fill, which I guess part of this delivers to, because you've got tools to do that, and you've also got some collection of data that enables you to do that.
And just, again, we need to keep our mind on where the market's sitting in the US versus Europe. So, you know, in order to get those products to work, you need more supply to be able to see across all the streamers. So, you know, it's a really important deal that Wurl are doing, where they're being agnostic and working both with channels and the streamers. And that's a key part to driving the revenue growth. And if we look at, you know, what's happening in the US, there's over 350 million connected devices that we can target, and in Europe that needs to grow to that sort of scale before we can get performance marketing to work.
So we can look at also at the volume of services. So Omdio have recently reported that the US has 1,874 individual channels, UK 602, Germany 508, France 447, Italy 361, and then Spain at 395. Why is this relevant? Because they're actually, in Europe, they're actually local language channels to some extent, and that creates a layer of complexity, doesn't it, in terms of the ability for the market to catch up with the US. What's your experience of some of the challenges of that? And
well, certainly that growth's got to come through, you know, the likes of people launching fast services. So, you know, that's still behind the US. So, you know, Samsung are the market leader in Europe right now. You know, where they take their distribution, you know, where their list is next and where they're going to launch channels, they're going to be the successful regions where they're going to launch. So certainly that's why you've seen UK and Germany doing really well, and they have presence now across Europe. So, and then, you know, LG are launching these services, but again, it's just, the problem is only going to get better when the people can find the channels, and they're only going to be, that's only going to be available when you don't have to flick between many apps to find them. So that is one thing. We are solving that as well with performance marketing. So
it's not just performance marketing. You've got some content discovery tools and others. We heard about it in the previous session. Share with us your thoughts on some of the opportunities with content discovery, because obviously it's critical. So you've got the marketing element, the performance marketing element, obviously. Presumably at some stage contextual is important. You've got specialist audiences, so hyper-serving those audiences and getting them to build their relationship with the content is important.
The performance marketing that we're doing under the product, which is content discovery, is about multi-platform. So yes, we can target channels to get more viewers. The other thing is we can actually open that up into the app marketplaces, which is another example we've been doing. So we did a project with AMC in the US, which is for an SVOD app.
Yeah.
And that was, again, learning about their data, what's on their app, creating creatives to then target the audience to draw them to that app. And then it's about how we can track attribution. So, you know, that's the key. Any marketing people have obviously got budgets. They have to spend that money wisely. So, you know, everybody's now looking for a return on ad spend and a return on subscription numbers. So, you know, the products that we've got there are to help drive both of those. So in the case of an SVOD app, that's where we are targeting viewers that we think would like that content. they download that app, and then we can track if they've downloaded that app, if they subscribe to it. So it gives the content owners, not only on their channels, but on their bod apps, the ability to track attribution, so they can really see a return on their ad spend and the subscriber numbers.
And that's critical, because there's so much conversation about some of the sort of grey area about attribution and measurement of engagement and so forth, but the ability to do a full funnel attribution model is going to be increasingly popular with people who have got budgets to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's different in each marketplace. The privacy laws in Europe are completely different to the privacy laws in the US. So again, that's one of the considerations we were talking right at the beginning. What is the difference between the US and EMEA? They are big factors in that.
So it's not just the privacy laws also, it's the agencies and what they know and understand, and the stronghold of PSBs and others on the ad markets. What's your experience of that in Europe versus the US?
Well, rolling back to what agencies are trying to do is they're trying to make sure that the brands that they work with are getting the best value for their spend.
Yeah.
So that goes across all cases on media, whether that's linear, apps, web, and certainly we're competing with the big tech companies like Meta and Google. They're getting, and they're, all these brands and agencies are used to seeing a return and getting the data back to prove the ad's been hit, it's been rendered, and that ad's been delivered. So of course, when it comes to targeting advertising for brands, they're used to this. So this is only, they want to see this happening in TV, and obviously that's where some of this ad spend is shifting, because rather than putting a wide net out of here's our ad spend, we're going to put it across lots of different mediums, they want to see this return. So that's all relevant to how everybody's making money in the food chain.
I was speaking recently to ZTV, and they were saying how they launched in Germany with 100% ad fill. They're doing incredibly well. Why? Because they're able to super serve a specialist demographic in a language that isn't typically available for them, of diasporas for various regions.
Z, luckily, are one of our clients, so that's good. Yeah, Z's been a great success story.
Yeah.
It really is one of the best performing channels in Europe right now. And, there's a number of reasons why that is. Unfortunately, I can't get performance marketing down for that one because we can't be doing that in Europe right now for them. But it's just a niche channel. It's got a niche following. It's hit the right demographic in that area. There was obviously a need for that type of content that isn't available through traditional media, and they've launched on fast, and they've been very successful. And I think that just shows that there's still room for lots of niche companies to launch fast channels. So certainly that is a success story. But I think there's obviously a need for that in the marketplace. And I'm sure they're going to launch plenty more across different territories and do very well.
I'm interested in going back into optimization of inventory and where you see that developing and growing and how you see people thinking about it. We've been hearing a little bit about that, and also whether there are other monetization models that could be incorporated into it. That's personally for me. I see Amazon and others making forays into content commerce, and I see inventory, if it's unfilled, sitting there where it could be optimized with content commerce. Where do you see ad strategies and inventory optimizations focusing? What's Wurl's sense of all of that, and where are you going with all of that in terms of thinking
certainly
about the roadmap and so forth?
With any of the channels that we're working with or any of the channels that we're looking to launch, first of all, you should have an ad strategy.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of channels that have launched, without an ad strategy.
Or a marketing strategy that
certainly.
hits.
So, having an ad strategy is obviously very important. You wouldn't launch on a linear service without an ad strategy, so you certainly shouldn't be doing that in digital. But yeah, so there's lots of complexity around that, because lots of different channels have different deals with different platforms. So I'm not going to get into revenue splits right now, but how your deal is set up with your streamer is fundamentally, are you in that food chain, or is you just getting a revenue share? So all of these things are quite complex, and it goes for channels, for different streamers, for different territories. So there is no hard and fast rule, but certainly I would see that some of the early adopters in the fast marketplace, that have been running channels for many years are now putting in their own ad servers and want a piece of the inventory. So
and the data behind it, and the ability to control the relationship with both their the brands and the audience.
Exactly. I mean, because that works for a number of reasons. I mean, one, they can see how well their ads are doing, they can see how well the channel's doing, they can see how well they're performing, but also they can use that to help grow the channel. And without that information, performance marketing cannot work. So unless you're getting the analytics, the audience, and the render rates, it's very hard to do performance marketing and get that return on ad spend.
Colin mentioned it earlier, but it is true, there is a real tension building now between content owners and traditional revenue share models, because content owners traditionally do want to move out and not completely lose control.
Well, certainly that wouldn't be for me to answer. That's
no, but I'm saying it as a general observation, as someone who looks at it.
I mean, I think Wurl's position on that is that we're here to help grow that marketplace, and we're totally agnostic. We have relationships with both the streamers and the channels, so certainly the deals between how revenue splits are set up, that's between them. But what I would say is that we want to see the market grow. We see there's plenty of room for growth in Europe, certainly around the ad spend. It will shift.
It certainly is. If you look at a forecast of 1.2 billion from Europe versus the 12 to 13 billion from the US.
Yeah.
There's room to play catch up.
Again, it's only going to change. It's where brands want to spend their money and how they want to see that return on investment. So, they've been used to this in the big tech. So, why wouldn't they want that in CTV? So, it's certainly the way to go. But we, as I said, we want to grow the market. We're also using a product called AdPool, which is our ad tech server, and that's helping drive revenue for both the streamers and the channels. So, as I said, the main focus for us is to help grow the marketplace. So, any revenue we can help both our streamers and channels get.
And so one of the challenges of that is obviously localization of content. Presumably that's something also that is becoming easier with different AI tools and others that can actually...
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's always a challenge. It's not just the different content. There's different platforms in Europe that have different rules around subtitling and how that's received. Some have got to be burnt in still, so there's still a need for actual content to have burnt in subs. So it's quite complicated. There isn't a real standard between all streamers, but I can understand that. They've got their own business to look after and grow. So, and there is challenges around that. So even AI won't actually help in that in some cases, because you still got to have burned in subs on certain content. So it is challenging, but there is plenty of tech coming up. Not something that we're really looking into. I mean, we are focusing on ad tech, really, how we can help monetize the channels, and that will move into all different sectors. I mean, we've heard lots already at this show in the short period of time around contextual ads.
Yeah, I think that's really important, relevance, and that relationship that you build with the context of the viewer.
We're looking at channels that are already doing that, matching the breaks with emotions.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I can see that's definitely going to be a few.
We heard about it also previously.
Yeah, and I think ITV have launched something around that in the UK. So certainly, using the AI tools that we've got to drive revenue is certainly what we want to do. And there's lots of different ways to do it. And certainly contextual ads is going to happen. There's some people that are already doing it, and it's going to help match emotions with ads. So it's certainly the future of where I see it.
So the future of content monetization on FAST really focused on deepening awareness through performance marketing, and also a UX that provides content in context and relevant to serving the audience.
Yeah.
Is that where you see things generally going?
I mean, in summary, yes. I mean, I see that the EPG and the channels will be integrated in a lot of the future tech. There's,
because the EPG experience is pretty unsatisfactory.
And a lot of TV manufacturers are working with some really good OS companies out there, like Vida. Titan just launched. So they're all trying to help find the viewers and drive revenue to the channels. So it can only be as good as launching across Europe and getting all the channels to be found by the consumer really easily. That's when performance marketing then helps.
So watch this space. You're going to see quite major changes in the UX of content search and recommendation and the experience that people have.
For sure.
Thank you.
Hopefully in Europe as well.
Thank you, Keith.